Thanks for joining us. My guest for this session of the DoD Modernization Exchange is Lieutenant General Jeth Rey, Army Deputy Chief of Staff, G6. General Rey, always a pleasure to catch up. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Jason, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You are new, relatively speaking, to the G6 role, so that's where I'm going to start, right? You had been kind of building up to taking on this role. We talked, I guess, a couple months ago, just as you were about to make that transition. So let's talk about the G6. What are some of your priorities? What's your focus over the next year or so?
Jason, thanks so much. And I appreciate everyone who's tuning in today. Jason, you know the world's changing. I'm sure you've had opportunities to probably read and see things that General George, our Chief of Staff of the Army, is talking about how the character and the changes in war is coming, and we have to look at things a little bit differently. So with those particular thoughts in mind, and the new Secretary of Defense coming on board, who's laser focused in rebuilding our military, establishing deterrence, and then increasing lethality and readiness, causes us to think differently. And what I believe is that our AUN, which is Army Unified Network Plan 2.0, that is now official and published and signed by the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army and the Undersecretary of the Army, is going to lay out specifically what we're trying to do across the board. It's going to focus, laser focus in on data. This is all about how we move data at echelon. So data centricity is going to be our focus. Most have heard me speak about this before, but if you don't clearly understand data centricity, it really comes in three imperatives. One, looking for robust transport across the board. Two, it's looking for cloud-enabled capabilities that we can move data at echelon. And then three, zeroing in on modern security architecture, which we label as zero trust. And we're going after that specifically to ensure that the data can be moved across all of our enclaves from NIPR to SIPR to the high side as well. And episodic mission partner environment, soon to be our mission partner environment where we can work below the cross domain. Another thing that we're looking at and laser focused on is just reducing complexity across the network and then moving that complexity up to the divisions and then so that the divisions are actually who is pushing data back down to the organizations, our companies and our brigades and battalions that are actually in the fight. So I'll pause there to see if anything else you would want me to talk about.
There's so much there to dig out of. So let's start with that Unified Network Plan 2.0. Walk me through just a little bit about maybe some of the highlights. How is it different than 1.0? What have you learned that went into this newest version?
Yes, so I think 1.0 set the conditions for the unified network. And most may not understand specifically what the Army is talking about when it's the unified network. So in the past, we had multiple networks that were out there. And what we've done at the strategic level is we've done what is called OrgNet convergence. So in 1.0, we really brought those disparate networks together so that we can have better visibility across the network. What in 2.0, what we're trying to do now is move that data at echelon, making it this more complex environment, a better user experience for the customer. And that's where data centricity is going to play big for us across the board. We have better and more robust transport. And so within 2.0, you'll see we'll be using lots and lots of transports. LEO, for instance. We'll look at GEO. We'll look at Wi-Fi. We'll look at cellular capabilities that we can. The spectrum is going to play a bigger role in everything that we do. From the tactical edge, we're going to look at the integrated tactical network as a portion of that. And how does that play into implementation? Because really what AUN 2.0 is implementing this environment that we're trying to create for a better user experience across the board.
One of the things I think is important to maybe put a finer point on is, are you looking at eventually you will get to one network or a smaller number of networks, but 1.0, as you said, set the conditions, understand, okay, how to take those multiple networks and really look at it from a holistic perspective. 2.0 now is talking about transport, but eventually the goal, whatever that end goal is, and we know with technology there's never an end goal, it's just a continuous journey. Is it to get to a smaller number of networks? We've talked about unified network operations in the past. How does this kind of start to kind of get you down that path?
Sure. So the unified network operations is a portion of what we're trying to achieve. In 2.0, what we're going to do is get better visibility at the regional cyber centers and the global cyber center out of NetCom headquarters in Fort Huachuca. Give them a lot more visibility. So the more we can organize the networks into a smaller footprint where we have better visibility down to the user experience that we're looking for, gives the regional cyber centers and the global cyber center better protection across the network, and they can anticipate if there's an issue across the networks. What the AUN 2.0 and moving towards the unified network will bring to us is that seamless movement across the network. So if I move from a camp, post, or station, say for instance, Fort Bragg, and I move from Fort Bragg to Fort Cavasso, for instance, I should not have to, renegotiate with the network enterprise center there to get onto the network. I should seamlessly go to my organization, plug in my CAT card, and I'm automatically on the network and operational. That is the end state that AUN 2.0 wants to bring to the table. So you have that seamless movement across our enterprise.
And the understanding right now is that if you go from Fort Bragg to Fort Cavasso, you have to, hey, enterprise network people, this is me, General Rey. Here's my ID. Here's who I am. You won't just walk in the day one and get going. It may take time on the front end before you get there. It may take time on the back end after you're there to really get going. And that's the whole user experience piece. Seamless integration. Always get to your applications, get to your data day one.
Correct. What Army NetCom is working on for us is AUDS, Army Unified Directory Services. And what that allows us to do is move seamlessly across our network enterprise. And that's the game changer, is the AUDS. And I'll tell you, every user that we've spoken to have said it's been a better experience under that platform.
Now, I know the NetCom folks can talk about it, but generally, are we still in this pilot stage, or is it just building, meaning, hey, we have, you pick the number 50 users, 100 users, and we want to get to 5,000 to 10,000. It's a build over the next year.
Is build over the next couple of years, installation to installation, post camp and station, until we are fully operational across the board. But this is a platform that we believe is going to continue to just grow, both CONUS and OCONUS.
The first time we got to talk, I remember, was when you were running the network cross-functional team. Let's start with a simple definition: data centricity. You tell me how the Army looks at it, and then we'll go about how the unified network helps us get there.
Yeah, so let's walk that back even further. So how did it even come about? For years and years, the Army has been a network-centric environment where we take our networks on our backs, we take them across to any operation that we were a part of, and our data resided very close to us. Walk that back even a little further. So as Afghanistan, which is the use case, started to close down, I was the J6 for CENTCOM, and the commander wanted to move all its intelligence over the horizon, but yet get that intelligence back into it. So data centricity goes back a couple years, actually. We have been a network-centric environment for several years in the past. Data centricity came about in about 2019, 2020, when I was a J6 at CENTCOM, and the commander at the time knew that we were going to be departing from Afghanistan, and asked a simple question. If we were to move intelligence out of Afghanistan, put it over the horizon, how would you get it back in as we degrade the environment from a transport perspective? We went from a 100 gigabit backbone to a 1.2 and then a 1.4 gigabit backbone. And they still wanted the same number of intelligence that were traveling through the 100 gigabit backbone to go across that environment to keep the protection in that country. Therefore, the team deemed it a data-centric environment in order to move. So we moved from a network-centric to what we deemed a data-centric environment. And so data centricity came about with, if we had robust transport, could we move data, chipped out data, and then re-collaborate that data back together at the other end and provide the same picture to the user to make an informed decision. And therefore, transport became one of the imperatives for data centricity. The second imperative was, like we stated earlier, is it needed to be more cloud enabled, where you can get to data through the transport. Because today we secure on our transport and the data is not secured at the other end. So the third imperative was, how do we secure data at the data level, is where zero trust became a part of that. And zero trust comes in two forms. You need identity, credential, and access management in order for the user to have one identity across the network. And the second part of that is, how do we tag and label data in order for our attributes to be used to get after the data? And so that is really the three imperatives of data centricity and the things that we're trying to achieve today.
Let's start walking through some of those imperatives as you laid them out, the three of them. Maybe let's start backwards with zero trust. I did a lot of did an interview recently with the folks at the Zero Trust Portfolio Program Management Office about tactical edge. We've heard Army CIO Leo Garcia talk a lot about zero trust. From the G6 perspective, how are you looking at zero trust? I mean, the same way across the Army, I get that, but what's your role in helping kind of protect the data as it moves from, you know, echelon to echelon?
Yeah, so the first thing I like to do is ensure that people understand what we mean by zero trust and how do we get there. I use two examples along the way, right? So I come to the Pentagon every single day. I have an ID card that I use in order to, my CAT card, to get me into the building. None of the guards at the gate know who I am, but I pass by them every day and I use my CAT card to get in. And that reader knows my credentials and it allows me into the Pentagon. As I move through the Pentagon every day, there are doors everywhere and every door has a reader on it, a card reader. From door to door, if I come to the G6, all doors I can enter. I go down to the Navy side or the Air Force, I can't get in because I have no credentials to get in there. It's part of the zero trust environment from a CAT card perspective. One other piece that I try to explain to folks is when it comes to a banking environment. So the banking environment is the same thing. So every day we get onto our cell phones and the user experience is the user that authenticates with the phone, that then authenticates with the application. The application then connects to your banking system and it creates a session that allows you then to use your identity in order to see your data inside the bank. Where my data resides and your data resides, again, they don't know who we are. They didn't trust us other than through our credentials. That's kind of the steps we're trying to get after when we talk about identity. So we want your identity to be single across our entire network architecture, our NIPR, our SIPR, and our episodic mission partner environment. If we can get that identity across there, then we'll use your credentials to move you across the environment. We will then give you access to data. We'll manage you while you're there, is what identity, credential, and access management looks like. But in order to get you to data, where we really need to make the largest leap, and this is going to be a culture change. Again, today we secure at the transport layer. Tomorrow, if we can get at the data layer where we label data, structured data is labeled with our CUI, our secret no phone. Our unstructured data, our ISR feeds, where you have metadata onto video, is how we tag the data. And therefore, we can use your attributes to give you access to that data in the future. That's your zero trust environment we're trying to create. Now, there are 91 different activities that get us there. Things like AUDS is part of those activities that allows you to move freely across the network, thus creating that environment across the board. Hopefully that's helpful.
No, I think the banking example is really good. It's something we all kind of understand and do. And then the other piece of this is getting down, as you said, the big culture change is getting down beyond the transport layer to the data level to look at labeling data, structured, unstructured. The one thing that you brought up a couple times is across the NIPR, the SIPR, and then obviously mission partner environment when necessary. The NIPR environment probably easy, right? We'll use that in quotes, right? But when we start getting to the sensitive and the classified environment, how much harder is that? Where do you see the bigger challenges to kind of create this data centricity view at the classified or the secret level?
Sure. So today, when we move data from our NIPR to our SIPR environment, we use a cross domain. A CDS is what we call it, cross domain. In that cross domain, there are role-based activities that take place. It's like a traffic cop. And that cop says, this person has access to X data with these labels on that information. And if they meet the criteria, that data is passed and is moved to that person to have view or even writing capability, so write capability. Tomorrow, when we use attribute-based access control, we want to work below the cross domain. We want to use software. We want to use your credentials attached to your identity when you sign on. For instance, if we put your credentials on your CAC card that says you have access to all these caveats that are on the labeling, then you will have access to that data. If you don't have that particular caveat, that data will either be grayed out or you just won't have access to it at all. That's the future.
I think a lot of this starts by, again, going back to what Army Netcom is doing, is be able to, one, sign on once and not have to come back time and again. And then it starts to kind of lay out, okay, General Rey, you have these read write privileges and then kind of work your way down from there. Obviously, it's a big lift. How are you going about it? What's the steps to kind of get there? Because I think the challenge is there's so many people are so different and there's so much data and more data comes in. It's the old, to use an Air Force analogy, changing the tire, changing the wing as the airplane's flying, right? How do you, it seems like one of those challenges. How do you ever get in front of it or stay with it?
So, so between the services and the Joint Staff J6, we're working very closely together. DISA is part of that as well. Obviously, we need DISA to be a part of this environment, and we're working collectively to achieve those goals. The folks in the J6 run an exercise annually. It slips my mind right now, but I forgot the name of it. But bottom line is that exercise brings in our partners, both from Australia and the Brits. There is where we collaborate together to try to pass data below the cross domain using identity, credential, and access management, and then put an attribute-based access control against both structured and unstructured data in order to pass that data through the network. So they're bringing their identity from their home station, not necessarily locally where we're conducting the exercise. The environment is actually using their identity from their home station to gain access to where the data is actually located. So these are tests and experiments that we're running annually with our partners.
Right. I mean, I think it sounds like such a huge lift. So obviously it's clear the take these baby steps, the old crawl, walk, run, and before you can say, okay, we're ready to go. The other piece that I want to touch upon, and I think this is one of the other imperatives you brought up, is this idea of transport, no matter what the transport is. You talked about LEO, you talked about GEO, you talked about Wi-Fi, cellular. Those are all being used today, but I think the advancements we've seen, for instance, with low orbit satellites, right? Low Earth satellites are has been a big game changer. Maybe talk about the transport side of this and how this is going to continue to evolve and where you see it going.
Yeah, so the transport is very, very important across the board. I mean, we can't move data without our transport. So we had to find and thicken the transport environment. LEO was a game changer for us, obviously, a commercial transport capability that was a full game changer. We had to gain landing rights all over the world in order to move our data. So that too was a heavy lift for us across the board. It all really took place with everything that has obviously we have seen taking place with the fight in Ukraine. We've learned or observed a lot from that environment that has been a game changer for us as far as what our transport looks like and how we can actually move data at echelon. We have it's obviously more bandwidth for us that allows us to move much heavier data, more video. It allows us to move more map data and in order for the commander to make a better and more informed decision. It has created a better COP environment for us, for our common operational picture for the commanders, where lots and lots of data is populated from personal location identifiers for our PLI, so we know where people are. All that has been a better experience using the different types of transports. Now, C5ISR have created an environment where some of the users see seamless uses of the transport. So they have created capabilities where if there's an issue with, say, a cellular initial entry circuit, it can eventually just automatically transfer onto LEO, or if LEO is having issues, it will automatically transfer to GEO. So the user experience have been improved by capabilities that C5ISR has brought to the table for the user.
General Rey, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from our industry partners next, and then we'll continue our conversation. My guest is Lieutenant General Jeth Rey, the Army Deputy Chief of Staff, G6. I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network.